And this can be done. This is a good insight.
Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Yeah, it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. I got in at around 1:30 last night. The flight from Delhi was delayed, and I'm just losing track of time right now. But thank you, everyone, for coming to this session. I've spoken in a lot of Unicom conferences before, and it's always great that it's not like a big conference where you've got hundreds of people. It's a small group where you can really have a lot of interactions, a lot of discussions, and I really look forward to that even today. That said, let's get into the core topic, to deploy or not to deploy. First question, what do you expect from this session? What does the title mean to you? Are we talking about cloud? No, we are not.
I think what you mean.
But it can be part of it.
About continuous delivery?
One part of it, yes.
When you're talking about it, are they ready to expose it to customers?
That's one part of it again. I'll actually break it down even smaller. How do you know the code is ready to go from a developer machine to a subversion system? Right from that point to promote the build across different environments. And that is what we are really going to be focusing on. Cloud is one small aspect of it. It's one of the ways potentially the team has decided to go across, but that is not at all the focus of this session. Okay. So very quickly, a little bit about myself. I'm Anand Bagmar. I'm with ThoughtWorks since the past almost 5 years now. I'm the test practice lead for ThoughtWorks. I've been in the industry, software industry, for about 20 years now. I'm doing testing for about 15, 16 years out of that. Done various different forms of testing, right from black box testing using Windrunner, Load Runner kind of thing, scripted testing, more into an SDET kind of a role with Borland software, with Microsoft, Amberpoint, and also played a support engineer role, which actually transformed my outlook towards testing and what quality really means. I would sincerely suggest anyone who is in the testing field to be in that support shoes, to know how customers really feel about the software that you have provided to them, and how your R&D team or your engineering team treats you with indifference about what customer problems are. As Saurabh rightly said, it's about the technology side of things we geeks are interested in, not the business aspects of it. So very mind-opening. For me, it was a career transformation phase when I was with Borland Software doing support. And I really love doing testing. Anything related with testing, I'll put my hand up. I'm the first person to do that. So I was one of the few people in the room who said I'm an individual contributor, though I do various different things, and I really love doing that. I'm not missing taking the leap to the other side yet. That said, enough about myself. We spoke since morning in various different parts, various different objectives of an organization. Right? Cost was one of the biggest aspects that came out. That companies want to make sure they're delivering, they have money remaining with them, right? Whether they're providing services or products. To do that, to make money, to save money, to provide value, you need to get the product or the service offering out in time. And this is only going to matter, assuming you save money, you provide value, you get it on time. It will only matter if the product or offering you have done is of good quality. So none of this is going to be working independently. It all has to come in together. Right? Only functionality will not get you anywhere. Only saving money or making money will not get you anywhere. For a short time, maybe it has short-term benefits, of course, right? But in the long run, it all has to come in together. Without that, no organization will survive for long. So, what is the reality in organizations today? As the background probably indicates, we are really spread out. Right? It's not about India, it's not about Hyderabad, it's not about one particular room where the team is co-located. It is who are you really touching across? Who are you working with across the globe? Who are you offering your services for? Is it for someone sitting in a room, or it is again anyone across the globe? Everything matters, right? So various reasons for this: globalization, cost factor. We want 24/7 operations. We want the team size. The team size itself is so big that we need to separate it out. We need to distribute it. It might be just different rooms in the same office, different floors, different cities, different countries, different continents, whatever. Mergers, acquisitions. Is it a reality? Of course, it's nothing new anymore, right? And of course, one of the other reasons why organizations want to spread out is talent. Talented people are found in each and every corner of the world. So, that's the reality. We saw the objectives, we saw the reality. Let's get into the technical side of things. Okay. What is one practice that makes teams successful? It is one of the practices, mind you, it's not the only one. Communication, good. That's not what I'm looking for. Sorry? Collaboration, good. Ties with communication in some ways, but that's not what I'm looking for. No, it's right. Responding to change, yes. We're talking about not process, we're talking about practice. Sorry? Brainstorming again comes with collaboration, communication aspect of sorts. Talent. Again, we're talking more in objective or other. I always get confused in subjective object. But I'm looking for get more on the technical side of things, not the 30,000 foot view. Get down to the team level. Continuous delivery or practice to enable continuous delivery.
What makes team successful is having the eye on the goal. What they need to do.
Eye on the goal, objective. Sorry, you were saying competency. Discipline. Okay, we are not going to get where I want you to go. I'll give the answer. But by all means, all of these are very important techniques, processes, practices, skill sets, capabilities required for all team members to have in the right way to make things work. But what I'm looking for is automation. Okay. Given the objective that we want to get to market quickly, we want to get a quality product out, and we also want to save money, we have to invest in automation. That is a reality. Okay. That said, let's flip the coin.
I think we should change probably a question that whose word directs everyone to this process.
Well, but it encourages interaction. So it definitely is more valuable when this session is after lunch, where this interaction helps people wake up a little bit. Hopefully not the case in this one, but fair point. I'll look into that one. But moving on, flipping the coin. True to a certain extent. But close. Absolutely. Why? Why is it also good practice that makes teams successful? And why is it at the same time also a practice that can make teams unsuccessful?
We need to know what to automate.
Very important point. We need to know what to automate. Okay? What else?
Time duration.
Sorry, this is going to be very interesting and all aspects are going to be true. So we'll take it one by one. Sorry.
It's not that you've done it and then it's there. It's something that you keep evolving and keep doing more and more of it as you keep adding more functionality.
Absolutely. So you have to keep on evolving. I'll add one more term over there which you did not say explicitly. It's about maintaining. Automation is code. You have to keep on maintaining it to evolve with the product under test to make it give the right kind of feedback. Otherwise, it's useless. Okay? Sorry.
Time. Business automation is taking 1 hour and manually 5 minutes.
Okay. That would happen for very specific cases, but very true. Very true. At the same time, it can also be flipped very easily to become successful. That manual testing is taking weeks of regression, where automation is taking a nightly build, for example, right? 6-7 hour regression cycle. So it can go either way, but very important point to consider. Any other things you are saying?
If it's not reliable, it's there.
Reliability. Yeah. Okay. Why would it be not reliable?
It's code again.
Sorry? It's code. Okay. Okay.
The quality of the tests are not good. It says it passes, but
You need a test automation for the tester.
And unfortunately, in many cases, that does become true. So when I was working in Microsoft, I was building this testing infrastructure to test live meeting at that point in time. And we actually wrote tests to test our automation infrastructure. But how far do you really go down that line?
We have unit tests for test automation function.
Yeah. And it is important, especially for the complex logic, it is important. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go ahead. But I think the essence is test automation is code. Okay? Code, how many of us believe, or rather, dev code is of production quality because it gets into production, right? How many of us have heard test automation code should be of production quality?
It has to be better than that.
Better than production quality. That's the first time I'm hearing that. But do we agree that as a baseline, at least it should be of production quality? Yeah. So we are, a lot of us in the room are leads, managers of teams of sorts, right? Are we QA managers, test managers, or no, dev managers, different types of managers? Everyone on the testing side? Different sides? Okay. How many of us as managers over here talk to our testing teams and say your code is of bad quality? Or what is the quality of your code? As managers, if we believe, or as a general thing, if we believe that test code should be of production quality, as managers, how many times do we ask our testing team, is your code of production quality? Forget production quality, is it of good quality? Yeah. At the risk of getting beaten up, I'll pose this question, why this hypocrisy? We believe in something, and it comes down to the value, the cost, the true objective of the product for sure. Right? I know the business reasons for it. But the point I'm trying to make is that to make it be on the successful side, you need to treat it also with that kind of respect. Okay? You need to give it that kind of importance. Only then will it provide the value to you. Okay? One more distinction I want to make over here, I'm talking about test automation. How many of you equated it directly with functional UI automation? Okay. What do you mean by test automation?
Automation is the core, including the unit tests and the UI automation, functional tests,
Great.
performance tests.
Okay, that's very interesting, and I think we are going to be good friends because we are talking about the full aspect of testing. Not to say that we are not going to be friends, but but the important thing to understand is automation is not just about functional automation. And the key thing, what I really like you said, it includes the NFR testing also, performance, load, security, accessibility, usability, whatever it might be. Does it mean you do each and everything for each and every product, each and every test case? Absolutely not. It comes down to the value of importance of understanding what is to be automated or not. Okay? Good. So we understand why it can be good, why it can be bad. Another aspect of why it can quickly start from a good, successful practice into a bad practice is the application of thought, the logic, the skill set, the capabilities required to automate this. It is very easy to record and play back a script, but can you make sure it can run against 5 different environments? It can run with any type of data, or it can use the same data at all points in time. It can handle delays in network, for example, those kind of things. To make a test, automation test truly reliable and deterministic, you need to apply the same developer practices to implement. Developers use design patterns of various different sorts. How many testers, from your experience, have heard about design patterns, know about various different design patterns? All they know is about, I know how to record a script, I'm going to record it using Selenium IDE or record and playback, I'll parameterize it a little bit, I'm done. Is that what automation truly is? It will work in the short term. How many times has that test failed after a few days, if not the same day again? Right? So there are various different things we need to consider about automation, and that is where the respect for automation really needs to come in. And it's not just by testers, it is by everyone on the team who's involved in looking at the quality aspect of it. And who looks at quality aspect? Starting right from the business owner all the way down to whatever the hierarchies are to the people on the ground level, implementing that functionality, validating that functionality, writing the user stories or the requirements documentation. It's not about agile or not. It's getting to understand what automation needs to be and how to get that. Enough said about that. So what truly is automation? Why do we need it? We spoke about time. We spoke about reliability. Right? Any other reasons why we need it? Fast feedback, right? So what does this really mean in the context of your team? Confidence. Spot on. In other words, automation is a safety net. Right? It is a safety net. You are writing code to validate another code. The net. So if I give the analogy of a net being a fishing net of sorts, right? Depending on what type of fish is there in the water, you would need to choose a net appropriate for that. If you choose a net with the grid too wide, the fish is just going to escape easily. Right? However, if you choose the net to be the grid size to be too small, even the smallest of dirt, debris, or even at times it becomes like plastic of sorts, right? Even water cannot flow through properly. As a result, you're not going to catch any fish. You're going to get water out like a bucket. The net has to be of the right grid size. Automation has to be of the right grid size, which comes back to the original point about you need to know what is to be automated. Then it can give you the right kind of feed. How many of us think that a 100% test automation suite, whatever type of automation suite, results in 0 defects in production? Has anyone come across that? So again, automation is a safety net. You build the net as dense or as loose as can catch the obvious issues. Having 100% automation coverage doesn't mean you will not have defects in production, right? And that's the reason why I asked you earlier, how do you define that 70%, 80%? It is based on the identified candidates. That identification process itself might not be complete. I know I'm very lazy. I might, while looking at something I'm testing, I might come up with 100 different scenarios. When it comes to writing it down, I become lazy. I might document only 70 or 80 of them. What happens to the rest? Right? So again, automation is no silver bullet. It has to be used wisely for the benefit of the team as a whole. How many of us have heard about the test automation pyramid? A few of us. Okay. So test automation pyramid was introduced by Mike Cohn in his book Succeeding with Agile. It was some time back, I'm forgetting the year. But Martin Fowler, one of the co-authors of the Agile Manifesto, he has written very beautifully about it in very simple terms. He's a beautiful speaker and a writer also. For those who have not read it, who are interested, he writes not only technical, a little bit process side of things also on his blog, which I highly encourage you to read it. But he's explained the test automation pyramid also very nicely. I'm in the process of writing a follow-up article on that because I see certain limitations out of the test automation pyramid, which I'm going to explain slightly right now. So what the test automation pyramid says, there's an ideal pyramid. Pyramid by definition is a triangle of sorts, right? Pyramid by definition is an equilateral triangle, rather. The test automation pyramid doesn't really indicate it's an equilateral triangle, but it's a pyramid, it's a triangle. What it means is there are various different types of tests that can fit into that triangle in a particular sequence. The order is very important. The base of the pyramid is unit tests, and it keeps on flowing on the top till it gets to the functional UI test, and potentially can add a layer of the NFR automation also on top of this. Okay. Now, it is very important to do proper manual and exploratory testing on top of your automated tests to ensure that things that have not been automated, you are validating those. You've not automated because you didn't think about those scenarios. Maybe they're too difficult and costly to automate. It's not possible to automate in some cases. In some cases, it's just exploratory testing around the system in various different forms. A very, very essential practice. If anyone says that I'm going to replace all manual testers with automation engineers, you are in for a big, big problem. Okay? Manual testing, the way it is equated by many people, is the scripted, is the checklist kind of testing. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm mostly talking about the exploratory testing side of things. That is very important. This completely defines what your automation and testing should be doing for the product under test. Now, if you look at the pyramid definition of what Martin has written, you will see something like this in the visual representation. What it doesn't really reflect very explicitly, though he writes about it, is the inverted triangle which sits behind this automation pyramid. Can anyone think about or can say what that means?
How much you are testing as part of your test.
Absolutely. So this dotted pyramid, it goes all the way down. What it means is unit test is actually testing specific functions code in your huge product code base. Very specific logic, very specific methods, maybe private methods for that matter. You might want to have unit test coverage around that, right? But that is very granular. I've tested my granular logic, but how is that logic coming together in form of different classes, different components, different systems that you're talking to within that same product scope? You start moving up in terms of integration testing or component tests, integration tests to go across that. Then once your UI starts getting rendered, it's come together enough. You've got some form of UI, and for UI, you'll have some JavaScript processing of various different sorts to render it in the browser or in the product. This is assuming a web-based product, but you can equate it to a desktop product also, for sure, right? But it's how is that going to be seen by the end user, that logic testing on that also. So you keep on going up. View test. View test is if it's a workflow of sorts, how do I spin up a specific page out of that workflow without having to set up the earlier stages? Just validate that one view by using stubs, mocks, whatever it might be. Validate that functionality and say, I'm done with validating that change. So if a radio button has changed to a checkbox, just spin up that page of the workflow, validate that changes, my test is done in that sense, right? And then you go up higher in terms of web service testing and then functional UI testing. So the impact of the product that each test is having, as you go from bottom of the automation pyramid to the top, it keeps on increasing. The other fact is the base of the pyramid is wide, right? So what it indicates is that you should have maximum automated tests in form of unit tests. So validate your logic, your code as much as possible at the granular bits. You have fewer than that tests as integration, fewer than that as JavaScript, fewer than that as view tests, and so on. What it essentially means from a testing perspective is a functional UI test. They should be least in number, but those least tests, what should they be validating? Is the widest breadth of the product. How many of us have seen testers writing functional UI tests, which is validating very basic granular functionality? Almost everyone has seen. I've been guilty of that at times in my early days also. But as a result, what happens is you get into different anti-patterns, which we'll talk about separately. Okay? The other thing, which is again not very explicit in this diagram form, is the impact on cost, effort, and time of the test. As you go from bottom to top of the automation pyramid, the time for feedback keeps on increasing. Unit tests, devs can run the test on their machine without even checking code into Subversion. Can you do that for the functional UI test? You have to build the product, you have to deploy it or install it somewhere in order to validate that same functionality. Think about the time required to go through that process for someone to validate the change. The effort required, again, in terms of building the product, deploying it to different environments, having different environments and integration points ready to validate that, keeps on going up. As a result, cost also goes up, right? If you find something wrong over here, it might have been, if you're lucky, half an hour before you find it at functional level and you send it back. In a complex system, so if I can pick on your Ramesh a little bit, in your product that you described, right? What was the build time? No, the product build. 13, 14 hours, right? So assume, think about it. If you find a particular change in the UI which is not as expected, you have wasted the team's at least 13, 14 hours time before which they could have found that problem. You're going to send it back again. They said, oh, sorry, I missed initializing the variable to something, default value, for example, to make it very trivial, right? For a trivial change, you're going to come back over here, think about the feedback cycle that gets delayed because of it. In that time, the devs might have picked up something else to work on. Now context switching starts happening, prioritization starts happening. How many of us have got bug triage meetings? Everyone. Why? Because of this, the feedback is wrong, and then the devs have already moved on, and you need to reprioritize to say, okay, what makes more sense right now? Okay? So it's a feedback cycle that is very, very important to understand from this pyramid. One other aspect that this doesn't talk about very visually is how many UI tests versus web service tests is a good ratio. Web service test versus view test is a good ratio. Can I say if I've got 10,000 units, I can have 10 UI tests, that is sufficient? Right? So there is no such calculation here. This is very representational. Everyone needs to put it in the context of their product to see what tests, first of all, make sense to have in my product. Maybe I don't have JavaScript tests. Maybe I don't have view tests. It's fine. Whatever makes sense to have as automation layers to give the early feedback to the team, each team needs to think about that and define it on its own. Based on the product, each team will sort of have a gut feel. There is no scientific calculation to this to say what should be the ratio between unit and functions. It can be a triangle with a very, very small height, or it can be a very low base unit test and almost like a cylinder of sorts, which might be fine. It is for representation. It is more to put it in the context of your environment, your ecosystem, and determine what is the right thing for your product. Okay? Last aspect on this is till the view test, right, from unit till the view tests. These are more technology side tests, type of tests. I have to change the radio button to a checkbox. It will start off from unit tests in some ways, if applicable. It can go all the way up to view test. This is the technical change that has happened from a radio box to a checkbox. Validate, just spin up that UI, validate it, you are done with it. However, why have you made that change? There must be a business reasoning, business requirement why that change is required. And that is where the business-facing test comes in either form of web service test or functional UI test, to say what is the business value I'm trying to achieve by this change. Let's validate that business functionality is now met instead of validating that UI change. Again, coming back to the granular aspect of functional testing, right? You have to think about what is important to be validated and why. Okay? With me so far? Now let's look at some reality. A couple of realities for that matter. There is a very well-known anti-pattern called the ice cream cone effect, where you've got a product under test which is the same triangle as we saw earlier, but now your automation pyramid is inverted. Why? Any obvious answers? We didn't start, or we don't have, for whatever reason, good or bad reason, you have a very low, if at all, coverage right from unit test level leading up to the functional. With these center of excellences, testing centers of excellences and offshore testing kind of models, this is a very typical thing that happens. I don't know what is happening on the other side. I'm just going to build all types of tests at a functional level because I know I can write code. I love writing code. I've done that. I've been part of teams which have done that. But that results in obvious problems. It quickly goes from the successful practice to an unsuccessful practice. Right? And as a result, do you have confidence in your automation testing? The feedback cycle is too long. As a result, what happens? You might have a big automation team, but you have an even bigger manual testing team, which is again going to do the same things because a 5-minute manual testing effort can be achieved instead of running a 1-hour test. Very much a reality, right? Very much a reality. There's another reality, which is I started calling this the dual test pyramid anti-pattern. And this is actually more common in terms of testing being separated from the development team. So we've got one automation pyramid, we've got another automation pyramid. This is what the developers have written, this is what the testers have written. And there is a divide. Can anyone relate to this kind of thing? Where on your product teams, you've got automation happening at various different levels. Can anyone think why these would be different pyramids though? Huge aspect. And primary reason in this case, right? The devs and the testers, they do not talk to each other. Devs have their requirements, they build the functionality based on those requirements. Testers look at the requirements, they write their Excel spreadsheets or Jira test cases or whatever tool technology. It's not about tool technology. They'll document those test cases in various weird ways, different ways, and they'll start building automation on that. Regardless, if that one granular check could have been automated by the devs already at the JavaScript test, for example. So as a result of this divide, what happens is two big problems because of this communication gap. One, there is a lot of potential duplication of automated tests. Do we agree on that? Because there's no communication, we don't know what is going on. What is a bigger impact of this? Time loss, maintenance.
Missed test cases, a lot of it gets missed out.
Is that a bigger problem or the time loss is a bigger problem? Because what might have been missed as an edge case scenario might be really crucial to the business, right? Because of the communication gap. And as a result, the time lost in terms of feedback when you get later in production or whatever, right? The standard cost of fixing defects later, right? It all comes down to that. So test duplication, I can live with in some ways. Missing automated test to be automated, I don't think I want to live with that. No team member would want to live with that, right? Because yes, as Saurabh said that there's someone else neck on the line first, but eventually who does it come down to? It is the team that it comes down to. We released this, we had defect in production, we had to roll it back. We had to stay back so many nights to do production fixes. It's a huge setback for the team from an emotional perspective for sure. Unless you just get so detached and say, it's just work, I'll just do what I'm set to do and I don't care about it. Which is again a bad thing. So, question for you. How does your test automation pyramid look like? Do you have a test automation pyramid or do you just have a bar on the top or somewhere? This one or this one? Mm-hmm. I think that comes down to the practices and processes on the team. We have executed at ThoughtWorks huge projects where we've completed all forms of automation in the same iteration. In the same sprint. 1 week also for that. We've had 1 week sprints or iterations. It all comes out to the practices on the team, the processes on the team, how much collaboration is possible, right? For us to be able to do done on a story from all perspectives, it meant that the devs cannot give me a story on Friday afternoon and say, okay, I'm done with development and you test it. There has to be better collaboration, better planning around things to say what is the latest in terms of estimation and planning, what is the latest, can you finish the stories, and maybe developers will start helping on the automation bit as soon as they are done to enable it is still completed in the same time. So there are various processes, practices around it, right? But still it comes down to the fact, if you look at the end of a sprint or end of a milestone, where does your test automation pyramid stand? What pattern does it stand? And again, there is no right or wrong in this. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not being judgmental in any way. But this is a retrospection that each team should be doing to say this is where we stand. what makes sense for us? Is this the right state of place for us from automation perspective? If not, where do we want to try and get to, let's say by next sprint or next month or in the next 2 months? And then you create goals and you create steps to get to that goal, right? Reflect upon yourself and see how you need to proceed on that. Okay? So since we were doing so much reflection in the morning, I thought I'll add these questions. That's why I had my laptop out also earlier. I was adding a lot of questions in this. Okay? Moving on. What is continuous integration? Anyone?
Write code and keep delivering it, and keep getting other things.
So writing code, committing it to some subversion, get others changes also immediately. Okay, that's the next bit for it, which ties into the feedback part what you were saying, right? So the team gets feedback with each incremental change that might be going on. Okay, absolutely spot on. So what it means is developers are writing code, they check it into some subversion, and you have hooked it up with some continuous integration server. This image is from Jenkins. It could be absolutely anything for that matter. Before ThoughtWorks, I was working for a company where we wrote our own build tool at that point in time. There were no good open source tools available at that point. But then you would also be able to trigger the builds and deploys from this continuous integration server, right? That's what continuous integration means. It gives quick feedback to the team. And from continuous integration server, you would have various different jobs or events or commands of sort configured to say what type of tests you want to run, what do you want to do with each code that is checked in, and what next to be done out of it. So you can create pipelines or dependencies out of it to do more and more. Okay. So this thing keeps on repeating on every check-in. Ideally, I've worked in on my earlier project at ThoughtWorks. I've worked in a complex banking platform environment where they still used to do the builds on a nightly basis. Forget on every thing, but that's fine. The next question is, we know about continuous integration. How often do we release our product to market? Three to 4 months, once a year. So I was working on a banking platform product that I was talking about earlier. The release cycle is probably 3 or 4 years or something with internal milestones of sorts, which is again a year and a half of sorts in between, right? Painful. Because the cost of knowing later, that late in the game, what is not working as expected or what was a misinterpretation of the requirement is huge, right? That's a problem. And that's where continuous delivery comes in. You use continuous integration as a stepping stone to get to continuous delivery. Where you have a business requirement, you do a design, you build the product, you deliver it to the customers, take that feedback again to business and incrementally keep on adding value on top of that to get out to the market. Okay. Now, this is a very old data that I have, and again, I don't even remember this data very well. But do we know how many times Flickr used to do deployments at least 2 or 3 years back? Flickr we all know about, right? Very popular site, very robust site for that matter. I think they used to do in the tune of some 115 or 18 deployments per day with features. Okay. Make my trip in another Unicom conference a couple of years ago, I think last year or the year before, I met one of the test managers over there. I think they did about hundreds of releases a month, a week or a month, something like that, which is massive. And they did not really use a lot of automated, completely automated practices. They had ad hoc means. It was still great that they were able to get to that kind of a stage of doing quick releases to market, whether it's just a data change kind of release or it's actual functionality, whatever type of change is required. But they were able to come up with some ad hoc way to get that done. It's huge. Wouldn't that be a great place for us to get to for our customers? Again, should it be on each check-in or a daily basis or a weekly basis? It depends on the context. Wouldn't it be great to see the work that the team is doing and get an instant feedback and see, oh yes, people like it, they're using it, let's get on to the next stage of development. Okay? So, what are the criteria that you as managers or team members think about when determining a build promotion candidate or a release candidate? What are the different things we consider? I know the obvious is going to be open defects. What else? Test coverage, open defects. Scribble a few things out here. So, defects, test coverage, open defects. Anything else? Or someone saying something about automation. What was that?
No automation. No automation. All test passing.
So no failure from automation essentially. Right? So feedback from automation essentially.
The business need or the business driver that if that feature is too critical, even if there are few defects or whatever, it still needs to put in, right? So
Okay.
what is the business driver?
Business needs. It's just a smaller word, so I wrote that. Okay. Anyone think about the trends of how the software has been performing? Or the overall actual quality of the product? Sorry?
Do we think about it? Yeah.
What do we do with that? Do we just keep it in mind? That's the nirvana state?
She also looking to defect detection rate, conduct some matches and
We find how many hours and how many people have actually been sitting in the batch, and out of that, what is the TDR,
Mm-hmm.
and using that, we identify what is the quality of the functional area or the output.
Okay. But it's still what has been found versus what you didn't even validate, you don't know. Right? So one thing is obvious, is the functionality what is expected? So are we building the right product? That is that would be one of the first primary criteria. The second, there are various different things we look at in terms of have we built it right? And for that, we look at the traditional metrics of sort various things related to defects, test coverage, feedback from automation, kind of thing. How do we get these numbers? So defects, it's easy. From any defect tracking tool, we'll get that. The defect detection rate and all probably is a little more tricky to calculate, right? How much time people are spending on whatever. So how do you collate this all this information?
So most of these standard metrics which we track based on the company product or services, right? There are tools which capture all of these data, right? So defect detection rate or whatever, all will come out based on the tools which are used as part of the process. So most of the things are.
So most of it is automated, is what you're saying?
Capture is automatic, yes. The analysis it may happen even not, but yes, the data is there.
Okay, that's good. So based on that, you would decide if your product is ready to go to the next level or not, if it can be promoted or not, right? How do you really know, other than the defects? Do you just blindly trust those numbers? Have you been bitten by those numbers? Right? Very true, and that is the reality again, right? That there's one thing that numbers can provide, one thing that automated scripts or tools can provide, but as people, the tools don't have emotions tied to it, right? As people, we know, I have worked on this before, it was so flaky yesterday, seems to be better today. Can you quantify that? It seems to me, I feel like it, my gut tells me it's ready or not, right? How do you get that? It's not really easy. It's not really easy, right? One thing that helps is instead of looking at just the release candidate numbers based on this and taking decisions, is you already have your CI mechanism, is looking at some form of trending out of those numbers over a period of time and seeing what do those trends indicate. Was the last number that you looked at an anomaly which was surprisingly very good? That's a big surprise the team is going to get later on, right? Or has it been on an increase to say, yes, this is a good enough state to be in and we can now actually use these numbers to a good effect. So trending, in my opinion, is very important for team to make decisions, not just on one baseline, but over a period of time, especially for long-running products. It is so important, right? So,
I agree with that. I just want to share my experience when I was a developer long back. I don't remember those days now. So in my first team, the project, and when we were on site doing the unit testing, right, UAT, client acceptance testing was happening. We are still doing deployment, development also, right? So
Yeah.
development was happening and the UAT was also happening at the parallel time. And at that point of time, just based on the manager's confidence in me and one of my colleagues, we'll do the development in the night, we'll do a self-test and bang, it goes for UAT, right? He will not even look into it. Now, I think that again comes with trending also, but it was not this technical trending, but the trending with the individual that yes.
Exactly, it's the individuals you come in, right?
Correct. So,
The comfort you have.
Exactly. So if I was part of that team as a new member, would your manager trust me also at equal level?
no.
It takes time to establish
Exactly.
that trust that, yes, I can trust this person, whatever he says, it's not good, I know I'm not going to go ahead. If he says it's good and with some confidence, this is a risk, I can go ahead with that. But if I say the same words, exact same words repeated, that manager may not buy it.
Exactly.
Right? So a lot comes down to the personal level for it. So, how large was this team?
This team, our module was 7-8 members, so it was only 1 or 2 of us.
Exactly.
Rest were not there.
And that brings me perfectly to my next thing, that this potentially works for small teams, right? The trending might be in form of gut feel or actual data. It works for small teams. How many of you work in small teams? What's the team size?
You see the product is a Scrum team.
Yeah, so that is fine. I'm talking about the deliverable that you're happening. So are you working on a product that is just 3 developers, 2 QAs? It's part of that, right? Others, I was going to say, if you want to take a nap now, that is fine. But no, don't sleep now. Now is the interesting bit. So, do our teams really look something like this? Various different complex teams with some form of interactions. I'm bad at drawings. I try to put together something. But does it sort of reflect the complexity? That we have various different teams. As we spoke earlier, right? You were saying about 130% team split into smaller teams working together. How do you really get them to collaborate and work together, right? So the challenge really comes at that point. At a small team level, you'll be able to do any ad hoc process, any undocumented process, and some tools, gut feel, people, trust between people will take you to the next level. But in large teams, you cannot rely on that, right? So what happens is, you've got product 1, product 2, product 3, product 4 as an example, and there is someone who's saying, tell me what's the quality of the product, can I go live or not? You'll be able to tell as an individual product team member, yes, my piece is good to go. Individuals might say that, but together, how do you know? Don't know. The current set of tools don't give that kind of trending or analysis in a collated form to know what is going on. Now, I'll share you an example. I was another team in Pune office. I'm from ThoughtWorks Pune office. Another team over there. At a peak, they reached about 55 team members in size, okay, including all different roles, distributed different. No, this was only from Pune. There are probably about 10 or so people in the client location also. For this particular team, they had split themselves into 4 or 5 different streams of work. At the peak, in continuous, we use Go, and that's a ThoughtWorks commercial product which became open source recently. In that continuous integration server, they had more than 50 jobs configured in it to run various different forms of tests, do deployments to different environments. And this included promoting builds from one environment to the other, so various different things. If we just try and increase that in a proper linear fashion for now, if we had to scale for your team of 130 people, it probably might have been close to, let's say, 100 jobs in CI. Okay. The banking product team that I was telling you about where I work, that was a 300 people team. Spread across so many different kind of locations, teams, distributions within that individual teams also. CI is not going to give this kind of information for you. What might also end up happening, you would have separate CI instances for each team to manage it well, because it's just difficult to find it in that chaos, right? What you're really looking for. It works well at the team level. How do you get it all together how do all these tools come together? And remember, we are talking about all forms of automation and manual testing on top of it, including NFR. So we're trying to bring in all that data together to take a big picture view of what is the quality of your product at this point in time. So this task of getting all this data together is very labor intensive, right? It's a thankless job, but someone needs to do it because someone at management layer needs to know what is the state of quality of my product. Can I go to the next environment or not? Can I do a release or not? Clearly, we cannot look at just the latest data snapshot. We have to look at certain trends, what has happened over time, to understand what would be the impact if we take this to the next level or not, right? Current set of tools, they have that limitation. So as a result, you keep on doing this manual effort and you keep on repeating it, add periodic milestones or whatever those milestones might be, keep on repeating it till you're done with it. So again, I'll ask the same thing. Is your product ready to go to the next level? How do you know? How can you know in an easier way is more of a question than how do you know. What I want to share with you today is yes, but still that's again one form of validation, right? So getting it on an internal server to the customer, those periodic showcases, one of the great practices in Agile for sure, right? Showcases, even doing interim showcases, not waiting till the sprint or iteration to be over. It's a huge way to get that early feedback. But it's not going to be sufficient as a whole, right? So this is where I want to share with you a concept and implementation of that concept, what I created, called the test trend analyzer. This is an open source tool that I built mainly because I saw in enterprises, this is where the challenge really comes about how do I know the trends of what my automation has gone through. Can I identify some patterns out of it to make meaningful decisions for the team and the team members to say, yes, this is what the quality of my product is. What do I do next with it? Okay. With that, very quickly, so this talk is not about this tool itself. I want to use this as a concept to share with you. And hopefully it is something that adds value in your individual work also. So one of the first things this TTA does is you can break it up in three different forms. One is the data collection aspect. Second is failure analysis. Mind my words, I'm saying failure analysis, not defect analysis. Okay. And third is trending. So I'll just share very quickly with you some of the features that are already built in, some of the roadmap that I had for it, and more importantly, what value this kind of data visualization brings to you. The first thing that we have over here is we are starting off with failure analysis. There's a feature called analyze failures over there, where assuming you've collected a lot of data for your project and all types of test execution data, right from unit all the way to NFRs. You say for a particular date, for a particular project, do some analysis and tell me what is happening. Now in CI, you could group in jobs together and it will tell you, okay, pass percentage is so much, right? I've got 80% test passing. Next day, I've got 80% test passing. Can you tell me which tests out of those failing 20% tests are getting repeated every time? Maybe it's the same failure for all the 20% failures, or maybe there are different reasons. So this is a view which analyzes all the types of tests for a particular build that you have, and it would group it and say that there were 3 failures in this case, test case 141 and 322, they are failing for the same message, versus the other one is failing for a different message. So what this kind of data does for me in a very crude way, the UI is very crude, right? But in a very simple way, I know that if I fix this one problem first, 1/3 of my tests will start passing. It helps me take meaningful decisions without having to go through the complexities of the CI jobs, looking at the logs and results to find out what the problem is. Okay? That is a failure analysis aspect. Second is a compare runs. Again, the data over here is not very valuable, but the concept again is very important. So 80% test passing day 1, 80% test passing day 2. and they're against different builds. Does it mean that the same test failing on both the days? Maybe one test started passing, the other failed, something else failed because of a change. Right? How do you know that? You'll have to manually go through the test results and try and find out by chance, especially if a test suite is huge. It's going to be just luck to find out, oh, this was passing yesterday, but it's failing today. That to me is a big flag, right? I want to know about that test first than anything else. If it was failing yesterday and failing today, it's okay, it's a known thing. But for passing yesterday and failing today, that is something my automation is there for. It's catching regressions, right? So compare runs takes in 2 builds, compares the test artifacts out of it, and says these tests are passing on both, these tests are failing on both. This test failed yesterday but passed today. Good sign. Developers fixed something. This is a big problem. It was passing yesterday, it failed today. So it will give you a list of those test cases, and you can quickly focus on those specific ones, do root cause analysis. Why was it passing yesterday, failing today? Maybe my test is just not updated with the product, which is quite possible. Testers are usually falling back in various ways, right? It is quite possible. Update the test, you are done. It might be an intermediate failure of sorts, environment going up, down, whatever, fine. But it might be a genuine product defect also, which is the real value of the automation. So that's where the compare runs kind of feature really comes in handy. The third feature is, as a business owner, as a director or whoever who's investing, who owns budget for the whole program, I'm investing so much on automation at various different levels. We got tools, we got various trainings to have devs create better stubs, mocks, whatever, right? We are spending so much on automation. What's the ROI? And ROI not in terms of the standard business definition, which I've never really understood or agreed with also in many ways. But it's more of, am I focusing on the right level of automation at different aspects in my product? Is my test pyramid really coming up like unit test is 105 tests, integration is 39 and functional 7, or is it the other way around? Again, it is not making judgments about right or wrong. It is giving a very quick representation of what is the state of your system right now. So you can say, my ratio is 7:105, that's the functional to unit ratio. Given the product that I understand, it should probably be 5:105 kind of ratio, which means I need to increase more unit test coverage to get to that kind of ratio. By when can I target to do this? Let's say 1 month, and I want to get a better ratio in that. It's for representation, very real time, based on the data that exists right now. What is the test split in the team? And it is bringing across all different types of tests together. It's not isolated in any way. The next thing, which is very important again, is understanding the trending now. Trending in form of, as a product or as a program, I've got various different products or projects going on. What is the level of automation and the success rate of automation from each of these streams of work? I could very quickly, given a date range, select different parameters for projects, sub-projects, and I can create a graph saying that this particular type of test is pretty consistent except for certain dips. This one has been consistent at 70% but suddenly dipped down. This one has been flaky all the way around. So there has to be something meaningful in this kind of representation to say either this team is doing really good work, but there are dips, we need to investigate why. Or this product is much more stable, the technology is stable. There could be various reasons for this. But now in one view, over a period of time, you get that data in a visual form to say, I want to focus on why are these test rates suddenly going down. Maybe it deals with some integration point which goes down at a particular point in time. Right? It gives me areas to investigate to say, find the root cause at this specific instance what happened, instead of just focusing ad hoc way, trying to find out why it might be going down. At the same time, this team is just where the test results are very flaky. Either they are not doing right automation, the team is not capable, the product is not right, it's not architected right. We need to do some serious thinking and investigation to make this more scalable. So this gives a very visual way to understand what's the health of the system at this point in time in form of trends without saying what is right or wrong. It's just using the data that the system is giving back in form of automation results. Similarly, there's a test execution trend. This I found to be very valuable for doing functional performance testing or functional performance benchmark testing for that matter. Typically, performance testing we do on isolated environment, a specific data set, no one else is touching that environment with specific tools. But our regular test executions give a lot of data also from that. So if I'm saying I'm going to take a simple functionality of login, for example, right, from the UI. Now, for a date range from 1st of October to 17th of October, these are all the times when the login test has run. It has been taking typically around 30 seconds to all the way to 48 and all the way down to 2 seconds. It's been between that. Now it is fine because the product is in development, certain things break at times, it's fine. Whenever I run the test, if it is this bucket, I could potentially say maybe the authentication system was down, integration system was down, that's why it ran much more slow. But why is this peak over here? Why are this peak over here? The typical range should be between, let's say, 15 and 35. Why is it taking so much more additional time? It gives point of investigations to say these each dot represents a specific test run at a time, right? Looking at that time, you can use it to do root cause analysis and say what happened at this point in time. Was it related again with some network issue or whatever else around the system, right? You can investigate into root cause during development time based on functional benchmarking. It's not performance testing, using functional benchmarking to say what is happening with those things. The increase in time, if it is linear, it just might mean that we are adding more functionality, more validation to the test. That's why it's linearly increasing. So again, root cause analysis only will say. Now this is in terms of the automation data that you capture and you are able to see. What kind of failure analysis, what kind of trend analysis can you do on top of it. The other thing is that this is a separate tool, a separate product. But each organization has their own different set of tools and products which give a lot of meaningful data. If you use Jira for defect or requirements, it has a lot of data, a lot of dashboards, very meaningful dashboards for that matter, if used well, and that can give a lot of information. CI still has a lot of information which is very valuable. So TTA is not to replace anything. It is an add-on mechanism. But then how can you integrate those dashboards in the same view so that you don't need to keep on flipping between various different views? There is a way to just integrate external dashboards into this. Likewise, if other tools allow it, you could integrate the TTA view into their dashboard and see results in that same common place. So it's not reinventing the wheel in any way. It's just adding functionality in various different ways that will be valuable to the team and how to take it forward. Now, once you have this kind of data, this is a functionality that already exists in the product. There are different things that can be built. For example, I want to see the pass failure rate for each project separately. I have all the data. I need to just map it in a different form, show it in a different visual form, which makes sense for the team, and we can create those views. There might be things for a specific project if I want to look at, just in terms of a pie chart, for example. That is possible. This is a view which is, I think, very valuable, though it will not be used on a day-by-day basis of sort. But I've seen this problem many a times where the tester says, I need more machines to run my tests. Why? You already have a pool of machines assigned to the team. Why do you need more? So we have all the data already in a central place. We can easily say which machine ran what type of test and for how long. We can aggregate the data because it already exists. And we'll talk about what data exists and how to capture that data also shortly. But if we have all that data, we can create this mapping to say, for machine 1, it was used for so many numbers of total hours by each individual project. This machine was not used at all. Maybe you should start leveraging this machine more before we provision a new machine for it. Yes, creating machines is easy on the cloud or virtual instances, but it's still cost, it's still maintenance in various ways, right? Why do you want to do that? Let's optimize the way we are working first before we just provision new machines for it. So how do you use TTA? It's a Ruby on Rails project. It's there on, it's copyrighted by ThoughtWorks. It's an Apache 2 licenses, but ThoughtWorks has helped me build this. And it's hosted on GitHub. So you could just download it from there, set it up and start using it. Right now it uses MySQL as a database backend, but there are big plans that I have for it to go forward. Once you have it set up, to see if it really works for you, in the UI, there is an upload test data form where it captures a lot of test metadata information for you. You would specify what is your project name, sub-project name, the CI job name for which data you are uploading, what type of test is it? Unit, integration, functional, NFR, whatever types you want. Right now it supports a specific set of hard-coded set of types, but it can be extended. The test subcategory. If I say it's functional, UI functional, we've got various different types of suites, sanity, smoke, regression, component-wise, whatever it might be. We can classify functional tests based on the subcategory again to make it manageable. The test report type, now this is where it really gets interesting. Whenever you run automation tests, it creates some test artifacts. It creates test results. How does CI see those test results? Because they're in standard JUnit style XML files or they are in JSON files. So any test framework that you use to run the test, if we create output in a specific type, all we need to do is there are certain types already created, supported by TTA. If it's not supported, you need to build a pluggable parser for those results and add it to TTA. Then you will be able to upload those type of reports also. Right now it supports JUnit, NUnit, Cucumber HTML, and I'm not sure if JSON is also supported. But there are certain types, standard types supported for it. You would say which OS it was tested on, what is the host machine name, various metadata information, not the test execution information. For the test execution, you would say what was the date of execution and upload the zip file for where all the logs are. It uploads it to a TTA REST server, it's a REST call. It uploads it to TTA. TTA will parse it based on this information, do whatever slicing and scraping of data and store it in its database. The data still goes to CI, but it also comes to TTA. Now, once TTA starts collecting all this data for unit tests, all different types of tests for all different projects in your program, you've got a collection of vast amount of data from automation results where you can start now making meaning out of it. You can do analysis, you can do trending out of it. Okay? So how does it typically work? We saw the manual upload where you would just try to see if that type is supported and how the data looks like, but that is not the view you would use at all times. What is really important is the automatic integration.